back again for another NFL Showdown video, this time for Monday Night Football between the Saints and the Seahawks, which is going to be interesting. We have two teams that are dealing with some injuries on each side, also two teams that haven't gotten off to the best year here in 2021. Their fan bases had much higher expectations than what we've got, so one team has to lose, one team has to win, and whoever is able to get the win will likely get back on the right track. So quite a bit on the line, especially some Draftkings contests as well. We got some big GPPs, on FanDuel as well, so lots on the line for the teams and for us fans. So what we'll do in this video is we'll go through a complete breakdown for this slate. We'll talk an injury report, we'll talk game flows, as well as our favorite stud options, value plays, and captain selections for this single game slate. So without any more delay, let's hop right into the injury report here for Monday Night Football. So we'll start with the Saints side of things for our injury report. We have no Michael Thomas yet. He is still going to remain on IR. We have Deontay Harris, who was just marked as out here on Saturday. So going to be without their number 2 wide receiver. Taysom Hill out with a concussion. Same thing with Dwayne Washington and Peyton Turner. All of them were rolled out today and will not be playing here on Monday. On the Seahawks side of things, we have Russell Wilson, who's going to remain on the IR. Same thing with Chris Carson. In terms of injuries, we have a few guys questionable for the Seahawks. We have Alex Collins, who's questionable as of right now, has not practiced fully to this point of the week. Likely going to be a game time decision. Actually, somebody I'm going to be projecting out. I do not think he suits up. I do think they go to DJ Dallas and people like Travis Homer. In terms of some other injuries, we have Damian Lewis, a guard, questionable for them. Darnell Taylor, who had that really scary, looked like a neck injury last week, but he's going to be questionable, could actually end up suiting up for this game. Then we have John Reed, cornerback, questionable as well. Moving on to a game flow, what we expect in terms of a script here. We have a relatively lower scoring game, just 42.5 points for an over-under. Again, a lot of that due to these injuries. We have a starting quarterback out for one team, starting running back, and on the other side of things, decimation all over the place in terms of wide receivers. So relatively hampered in terms of offensive production right here. And in terms of a spread, we have a 4.5 point favorite being the Saints. So even though they are on the road, they're playing against a backup quarterback. They have a relatively stout passing defense and are expected by Vegas to win. In terms of whether I agree or disagree with that, I think that's just about an adequate line. I do think the Saints defense has some really good people in that secondary, relatively underrated pass rush as well. And Jameis Winston, he's an adequate quarterback. He's just about as average can get. Is not quite the prolific turnover machine that he was over there in Tampa Bay. A little bit more reined in now, not trying to throw the ball downfield on every pass. And overall, I do think the Saints get a win here. I mean, Geno Smith against the Steelers looked pretty trash. And we'll get to that with our picks now. So let's talk about our stud options. For our Saints side of things, yes, a defense makes this video for probably the first and only time this year. And it really comes down to opportunity. There's not many stud options on this Saints team. Deontay Harris has been rolled out. We have Michael Thomas who's not playing. So in terms of stud options, we've got Jameis Winston, we've got Alvin Kamara, and then pretty much Marquez Callaway. And Jameis Winston isn't necessarily somebody I'm going to be going to a whole lot on this slate. I'll have him in a few lineups, but he's not going to be one of my foundational pieces. He's just far too expensive, $11,800. And again, I like these options a little bit more. So the Saints defense, relatively expensive on this slate, so I expect them to go a little bit lower owned than they should. But against the Seahawks side of things, there's a real question where they're going to get their offense from. I mean, DJ Dallas hardly has any snaps on his record at this point of the year. He's likely going to be the starting running back. Of course, Geno Smith, he looked good in his first replacement game when he came out for Russell Wilson, but in his first game as a starter, looked dreadful. So the Saints defense I'd like going to. They are a turnover-producing team, a team that gets plenty of interceptions, forces plenty of fumbles, and like I said before, has an underrated pass rush. So against a backup quarterback, you get a lot more potential for turnovers here. And if they end up taking one into the house for a touchdown, could wind up an optimal play in GPPs. At number 2, we have Marquez Callaway at $8,600. And since Deontay Harris is not going to be playing, again, Michael Thomas not returning, just a lot of lower-level replacement players in general on this offense now, Marquez Callaway is going to get even more targets. With somebody who was seeing 6 to 8 targets per game, I have him projected for 8.5 targets in this game. So up in the higher end of that target range. Definitely going to see some ownership, nearly 20% ownership in my projections right now, but at a projection of over 18 points. Again, he's just one of the only healthy bodies on this team. I love going to him, and even so at the captain slot, which we'll get to a little bit later. But at number 1, I didn't have to tell you to play Alvin Kamara, so we'll be quick about this. He's $12,800, but he's more than worth that price tag. Expected to be owned in nearly 70% of lineups, but I'm still going to have more than the field. He's projected for well over 20 points at 21.7 points. Somebody's going to give you a ton of PPR production, also production on the ground. And with Deontay Harris out, they're going to rely on Kamara out of the backfield even more so than usual. He's already one of the best fantasy players in the entire league, if not the best fantasy player in the league, especially with Christian McCaffrey sidelined. But any matchup like this with a lower over-under, you gotta like him even more. And that might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but this is a single game slate. We don't care about their scores in this game compared to any of the other ones on the slate. We're just looking at players within this game and the type of role we expect them to play. And Alvin Kamara has an extremely high floor, somebody who gets a ton of PPR production. He's also going to get plenty of carries, so we know that he's going to be touching the ball more than anybody else in this game. And when you have a lower total game, you're looking for the guys that are going to get the ball the most. Not only do they have a high floor, but they're going to have every opportunity, or at least the most opportunities, to score a touchdown. So Alvin Kamara, again, don't want to beat the drum too much here, but going to be my favorite play on the entire slate, not just on the Saints side. Now for our Seahawks spend-up picks. Also, quite a few players that are out here. You can see at number 3, we have DJ Dallas at $5,200. When Chris Carson went out, when we also were not able to have Alex Collins last week, DJ Dallas was the player that was getting all of the run. He was in there getting targets out of the backfield. They were also giving him carries towards the end of that game, even though they were behind, and he was relatively effective. So it's not like DJ Dallas is a huge step down in terms of talent. They were already playing with backup running backs out there. So at $5,200, I do think he gives you quite a bit of salary savings that I like. At 15.6% ownership, I also think that's a little bit too low. I mean, clearly Alex Collins was a massive play last week, got a ton of production, was able to score touchdowns, caught 5 or 6 balls out of the backfield. I don't expect quite as much production. Again, this is a lower total game. Also a defense that's going to be a lot more stout with the Saints here. But he's going to get enough touches to pay that off. So you can see projected for 13.5 fantasy points, and I think you could do a whole lot worse in that $5,000 range. At number 2, we have DK Metcalf, who makes this list just based on opportunity cost. I'm not a huge fan of going to Geno Smith on this slate. Even against the Steelers, when he saw plenty of garbage time production and ended up getting more yards than he really should have, he still didn't end up paying off. So DK Metcalf, somebody I'm willing to go to a little bit more just because of the PPR upside. He was by far the most targeted player on the Seahawks team last week with Geno Smith as the starter, and if that's going to be the case, he's at least going to make my pool. So at 24.4% ownership, this isn't somebody that I'm getting 2 or 3 times the X the field on. I'm probably rostering him closer to a 40-50% mark, but at 17.6 projected points as the number 1 threat on this team, at least worth rostering here on the Showdown slate. But for our number 1 target, this is going to be Tyler Lockett, who definitely had a down week last week against the Steelers. He's a little bit cheaper than DK Metcalf here at $9,000. Projected for a relatively similar amount of points there at 16.8 points, but I just think Lockett has a higher floor here. Obviously, somebody who does a little bit more damage with his PPR upside is going to get more targets than DK Metcalf, at least in most weeks. We didn't see that pan out last week. So as a result, I see a lot more people going to DK Metcalf, obviously going there in terms of ownership. So for me, taking a look at all aspects of this game, including game theory, Tyler Lockett becomes the better play. Again, we're expecting more targets from him on an average basis, and just because it didn't happen last week doesn't mean that doesn't happen going forward. I mean, it could very well change. Lockett's just a shorter route specialist. Somebody who's also not going to have to deal with the best cornerbacks on this team. Over with the Saints, you obviously have Marshawn Lattimore, a couple other defensive backs that are really good, at the top of their level, Pro Bowl level players. DK Metcalf's going to have to deal with that attention. Tyler Lockett likely to be covered by some of the lower tier players on this defense. So as a result, I like the matchup. I also like the fact that he's due for some regression with his target level. And again, a nicer price tag there at $9,000. Before we hop into our value picks, just want to quickly remind you about my NFL Patreon projections page. For just $1 a month, you guys get access to my projections for every player here in Week 7. That's for our Showdown slates, for Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football as well, but also for the main slate. Anybody that'll be touching the ball, from second string wide receivers to stud running backs, the whole way down to your third, even fourth string wide receivers. I project them all to make sure that I have everything covered for you guys. It's not just player projections. We also have ownership numbers. We have some game theory notes, access to the GSLU community Discord, and more. And again, the best part about it, it is just $8 for the month. So by far the best value in the entire industry. Link will be in the description so you guys can go ahead and join and become a part of that. Highly recommend that you guys go ahead and check that out. And now moving on to our value plays. At number 3, we have Jawan Johnson at $2,200. He's going to be the starting tight end for this team. He has been for all year. Not a huge part of this offense. They've run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. And in general, these 2 tight ends for the Saints not hugely athletic, not hugely productive players at tight end. But at $2,200, you could do a whole lot worse. He's also not garnering a ton of ownership at just 12.3% of lineups. And an 8.1 projection, you could do a whole lot worse. If he ends up going out there scoring a touchdown, he winds up in the optimal lineup. At number 2, somebody I'm a little bit more excited about, and all 3 of these value plays are from the Saints, so keep that in mind. Again, just so much opportunity opened up with the injuries we have there. It's Kenny Stills at $1,600. He's going to be playing the wide receiver 3 role for the team, potentially wide receiver 4. We're going to have to see how the snaps between Kenny Stills and Hogan are split, but at $1,600, he doesn't have to do much to pay off. Also not garnering tons of ownership, just like Juwan Johnson. So at 11.5 projected points, I really like him here. Again, if he goes out and scores a touchdown, he's definitely going to be in the optimal lineup. But for our number 1 value play, and this is just an absolute steal of a price tag here at $400, that is going to be Chris Hogan. He's, again, going to be playing either the number 3 or number 4 wide receiver role for the team. And we know they love passing the ball a whole lot over here with the Saints. And given the game script, given the bodies that we have healthy, I see him playing 35, even 40% of the snaps. And at that price tag, that is more than enough opportunity to pay off. I am projected for single-digit ownership right now. Might end up creeping up a little bit now that the news came out. People may start to adjust their lineups and whatnot, but nearly a 9-point projection, and he doesn't even have to come close to that to pay this off. With that extra $2,000, even $3,000 you earn by using somebody like Hogan, you can spend up for essentially whoever you want. You can take both stud wide receivers for the Seahawks. You can take both quarterbacks if you really wanted to. I'm not a huge fan of that. I like Jameis Winston, but I do not like Geno on the slate. But it gives you the ability to do that, which is a huge deal. And here on this single game slate, that's why he comes in as my favorite value play. And now for our captain selections. At number 3, we have Tyler Lockett. And we've already talked about the kind of floor that I think he has just because of the targets that he's likely to see. Also being overlooked at captain. He has a single-digit ownership right now, so much less ownership on somebody like a DK Metcalf at the captain slot, and also a relatively high projection. See, 25.2 points. I like going to him in this situation, especially because he could see some usage in garbage time. At number 2, we have Marquez Callaway at $12,900. So a little bit cheaper than Metcalf, and actually comes in with a significantly higher projection. Relatively similar ownership numbers, and again, he's going to be the clear number 1 option on this offense, aside from Alvin Kamara. So Deontay Harris not playing, you're going to be cycling in a few of these other wide receivers, but the constant in terms of wide receiver production is going to be Callaway. We're going to get at least 90% of snaps here. Again, I'm projecting close to 8.5, maybe even 9 targets, and becomes an absolute smash spot at the captain. But our favorite captain play, and again, I probably didn't have to tell you to do this, but it's going to be Alvin Kamara at $19,200. Definitely garnering ownership at 20.5%, but I'm still going to get leverage here. I'm probably going to have him in at least half of my lineups at captain. It just really comes down to the usage. He's going to get more touches than anyone else in this game, likely by at least 10 touches. He's going to give you plenty of PPR production. And with people like Chris Hogan, Kenny Stills, and Juwan Johnson in terms of value plays on the slate, it's easy enough to pay up for that $19,000 price tag. Typically that would be very prohibitive. We wouldn't be able to make many unique lineups, but given the value plays on the slate, it's more than easy enough to fit him in. And with the type of floor that he has, and of course, true 40, 50 plus point ceiling, I love him there at number 1 for our captains. This is all we've got for our Monday Night Football picks, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you've got as your favorite captain pick on the slate. Perhaps it's Alvin Kamara. I think he's the slam dunk pick there. Or maybe you're going to somebody completely off the board that I wasn't thinking of. So either way, would love to get some debate going down in the comments. So go ahead and let me know who you've got. As always, guys, I really appreciate your support here on the channel. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you guys haven't already subscribed to the channel as well, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. That way you guys don't miss any of the content I'm posting here. We have Showdown content for every primetime slate, of course, main slate NBA content, PGA Tour content, UFC content, and basketball content to come. So something for everybody out there. If you enjoyed this database content, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more. Until next time, good luck with all of your lineups here for Monday Night Football, and I'll see you guys for our Thursday night preview on Tuesday morning.